gland. Okay, so that's how you tell the difference between that. You can also see what is known as oxyphil cells in a parathyroid gland. Very similar to what we said the anterior pituitary had, the anterior pituitary had some fills that we actually talked about and said that they're either acidophils or basophils. Well, this one loves oxygen, and so we've named it oxyphil, okay? And that's very specific to the parathyroid gland. So chief cells, and chief cells we'll see in other places when we talk about the digestive system, but chief cells and oxyphil cells are part of the parathyroid gland. You can see them here as well. I am not going to have you label the difference between these because that's just crazy. But know that if I was to give you something that just, blanked this thyroid gland out, you should be able to name this slide, knowing that chief and oxyphil are part of the thyroid gland. Now, if you were in my in-person lab, we would be looking at these slides under microscopes. And what you want to do in a microscope is look at the dead center. That is your field of view. So what's going on out here, you really don't care about because you prepared the slide to look at the dead center, right? So I just want you to make sure you are always focused on that when you're looking at any history or any slides, okay? Parathyroid hormone is also known as parathormone. That's just another term for it. Now, here's the adrenal gland. Well, we said the adrenal gland sits superior lateral to the kidney, right? This is a cross-section or a transverse cut of the adrenal gland. When we do the transverse cut, we'll see an outside border, and then we'll see an inside different tissue. The outside border of any organ or anything in anatomy is always the cortex, okay? The cortex is always going to be harder and tougher because it's protecting what's on the inside or the medullary portion. The medulla or the medullary portion is in the inside. And by the way, I would love some feedback if these colors aren't working for you, or if I'm going too fast, too slow. Please give me feedback. I'm going to assume everything is fine and dandy, unless you tell me. So I am here for you guys. So I want you to give me as much feedback as possible. What can I do to make these lectures better? Because this online thing is new, but lab is new for me. So we're trying to get the most of it by doing it this way. All right. So once again, cortex is the outer covering. Inside is the medulla. And you will see that this is just another cross-section of adrenal gland. And I typically don't like this one just because you can't really see the difference in the layers. So medulla, you will see the cells are tightly packed. Okay, the dark dots, remember, are the nuclei. And in the cortex, they're a little spaced out. Okay, because what's in between is usually connective tissue. And that connective tissue fills in the gap to make that tissue tougher. All right, so this is what I star highlight. Cortex of the adrenal gland itself has several layers. Okay, before we get down to the medulla, we have 3 major layers of the adrenal gland, and your textbook goes through this, and you've also done some matching activities on mastering A&P, so these terms should be a little familiar. I won't expect you to actually understand this. This is why I'm doing this, because how in the world can you guys just read that and do some click here and there on mastering and be able to know what this is? I couldn't learn that way. So I'm assuming you guys aren't learning that way either. So, all right, so on the top or most superficial, we have the zona glomerulosa. Then we have the zona fasciculata and the zona reticularis. So I want you to actually look at the presentation here. The term reticular means network of fibers. Anytime you see the word reticular now, you're going to think network of fibers. Those cells are densely packed together. So as we're heading towards the medulla, that's what we're going to do, is because we said that the medulla we said the medulla is tightly packed together, cells tightly packed together, and so the reticularis is going to have that presentation. As we move further to the cortex, we're going to allow for more connective tissue and stuff to fill in the gaps between our cells. So fasciculata and glomerulosa up top, okay? And you can see the reason why these layers have different names is because each section actually has a different hormone releasing function. So zona glomerulosa releases the mineralocorticoids. You see the word mineral in there, and you want to think aldosterone. When you see aldosterone, you're thinking sodium. That's why this is a mineral. Sodium is a mineral, isn't it? Okay, so mineralocorticoids, sodium, aldosterone. That's all you need to know for now. Lecture, I'll tell you what that means and why. Zona fasciculata doesn't do much. It's just actually growing this layer to become mineralocorticoids, or the zona glomerulosa. Now, the zona fasciculata, in between the zona fasciculata, you will actually see specific cells that are mature that are called spongiocytes. And that's just based on the stage that they're in. And the spongiocytes will release cortisone. So the glucocorticoids, gluco means sugar. Corticoids we get from the word adrenal cortex. Cortisone we get from cortex. So we know cortisone comes from the adrenal cortex. Okay, and because it has the word gluco in there, you are going to assume that cortisone has something to do with sugar, right? Well, cortisone has the ability to increase glucose absorption. Okay, so we'll learn all about the function of that in lecture, but for now, just be able to clear this page so you can see it. Be able to recognize this slide, and just know the zona fasciculata releases cortisone as one of your examples of hormones that it releases. Remember, I said know how to recognize these slides and use your lab list as a guide. So here's another slide for it as well. You can see the zona reticularis here. The zona reticularis, which is closest to the medulla, does your androgens and estrogen. These are the gonadotrophic hormones released by the testes and the ovaries. Then we have the adrenal medulla. The medulla is all about the adrenaline, okay? So this is what it looks like. The medulla is so tightly packed, and people always say, so what are these holes over here, Dr. K? Well, those holes are actually representing where veins would go through, okay? So that's not what I want to focus on. Remember, focus on the center, and you will see that these cells are tightly packed together, and in between we have a network of fibers. It's a very reticular network that we have. That brings us to the pancreas. The pancreas is a funky-shaped organ. It looks like a shoe, doesn't it? And here's the laces. Woohoo! Now you can't stop seeing that. Let's draw a little Nike swoosh on here. There. I'm having way too much fun. Okay, so just keeping y'all awake, because I know it's hard to listen to somebody without looking at them, and at least you're getting some of my personality. So here's our shoe over here. This is the head, this is the body, and this is the tail. Okay, that's the exact terminology for the pancreas. What the pancreas actual function is mostly exocrine. Now we're talking about the endocrine gland, right? So a majority is exo, means that it has these ducts, because the pancreas is vital to digestion and it's part of the digestive process. However, we're not going to talk about that. We're only concerned about the endocrine part. So on histology, you see these vessels? These are all the ducts as part of the pancreas digestive function or exocrine function. However, And so I'm going to skip this exocrine pancreas because we don't care. We're in the endocrine system. However, the endocrine system part has specific cells within the pancreas called the pancreatic islets. And those are known as the islets of Langerhans. All right, I'm going to write that. Whoa. I think Langerhans only has one A. I don't remember off the top of my head, but islets of Langerhans, this is the guy who just invented it, because back in the day, men did a lot of looking under microscopes, apparently. So when they discovered something, they put their name on it, right? That's how you do. So islets of Langerhans has specific type of cells that are releasing hormones. So you will see bundles of cells within the pancreas that do this. Okay, so here we go. This is your islets. Now within the islets, you have alpha and beta cells that do specific things. These are just several different type of cells showing you the difference of the islets of Langerhans. Now we've just blown it up and we see that there's alpha cells and beta cells. Do not worry, I will not require you to know the difference between alpha and beta by labeling it. But if I told you that this is a slide with alpha and beta cells, bam, you should tell me islets of Langerhans and the pancreas. Alpha releases glucagon, beta releases insulin. We'll learn all about the details of those in physiology when we talk about it in lecture. However, for lab, be able to recognize that this is a slide of islets of Langerhans. Now that brings us to the gonads. This is the ovary. An ovary has so much going on. It's amazing. So you can see a big area here called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes progesterone. Progesterone. And it is the place on the ovary that where the egg kind of spews out from. And so when it leaves, it produces progesterone because your body, or the female body, thinks it's getting pregnant next week at all times. So there's two things that the body always does. It always thinks it's getting pregnant, so it's going to prepare for nourishing a baby, and it always thinks it's going to starve next week as well. So we're always storing fat. It's great to know those things, right? Lovely. So the odds are against you, really. So this is that same area. See that corpus luteum? That's that area where the egg spewed out of there. Well, egg's probably going over here into the fallopian tube. And where for 2 weeks, this will stay like this and continue to produce progesterone. But if that egg does not get fertilized, it shrivels up and it becomes, is it on here? The albicans. It's showing a whole bunch of cells in different stages. I don't see, oh, here it is. So it shrivels up and dies and becomes white, and that's now then known as the corpus albicans. So you can see a different stage of all the eggs here in your ovary where that is happening. So see little bitty eggs, how cute. And that's the big corpus luteum. Remember, just being able to recognize the slide, but me talking about this stuff, it's going to stick in your brain. So I like to make jokes and talk about this stuff because it's all about frontal memory. You know, frontal lobe is where your memory is. And if you attach it to an incident or a feeling, this is why studying with music is always good. Light music, not anything with lyrics, helps you retain information. That's a little side note there. So these are all the follicles that you will see in an ovary. Do not get this confused with the thyroid gland. Okay, I see that mishap a lot. How do you know that it's not a thyroid? Because in here it actually has stuff in it. If it was a colloid cell, this would be clear. Okay, so tons of tissue there that you can see. This is absolutely neat because this is the egg getting ready to Oh, let's take a look at that. See? Very cool. Okay, so ton of ovary. We have an entire chapter on this, so don't even worry about all of that. Just know that it's ovary, and here's that corpus albicans. You know, this is you want, you did not get pregnant, and so we shrivel up and die and turn white and stain it. Now, brings us to the male, testes. So we have a whole chapter to talk about this in detail, but I just want you to look at the histology here and how awesome the seminiferous tubules look. Let me change my marker here. So these, what? So I guess yellow is not showing up. Right. There we go. So these are all areas of sperm production, and the seminiferous tubules look exactly like that. Do not confuse this with thyroid either. Okay, they're elongated, so they're not follicular cells that you see. And when you look at a close-up of the testicular tissue, you can actually see little sperm. Look at that. Oh, how cool. See? So you can see sperm in every phase. Pretty awesome. And these are Leydig cells, which secrete testosterone, and that is the specific endocrine function that we're looking at. You know, we're not so concerned about the sperm in here. That's the reproductive chapter. But we're looking at the cells that are going to have the endocrine function. So that's what I want you to look at, which are these here, which the ones that have the nuclei that you can see the darker dots around. And this is a brighter and more magnified view, and here you go. You can